Today is December the 12th, 2021. Guest speaker Christopher Carter shares with us a Christmas message.
Christopher Carter is with us tonight, and he is a gift, and we're excited that he's here. Part of the introduction for Christopher Carter is that you can make wonderful, lighthearted, humorous jokes and stories and have fun, and it's all just going to flow right together. And so, welcome, Christopher Carter. We're glad you're here. Please come on up and share as the Lord leads you. Let's give him a welcome, everybody. Amen.
Oh my goodness. You guys are something else. Every time it gets better and better. I really do love it that it's so comfortable that I do walk in the door and get a lot of sass from a few certain people. But I do appreciate it a lot. I love what's going on in Nashville. I really do. I get to hang out with some really great people in this city. And whenever I'm here, I just get this treat. There's a few fellowships that I just have really grown to love and be accepted by, and I feel like I'm part of the family. And so coming here to spend time with you is very familiar to me. Like, it's just not like I don't want to, undersell this, but it's not like a special occasion. It just feels like a normal occasion. It just feels very normal. So thanks for opening wide your doors and letting me come in and be myself and not have to worry about anything. I really like Christmas. Do you? Are you in with Christmas? Is that okay? You're feeling Christmassy? Josh was like, I don't know. I'm going to change your mind today. I'm like a Christmas evangelist. I can sell Christmas to people. But I want to talk about kind of what it all means. And in order to do that and to get right to the point, I'm going to say that with no intentions of my own, in this journey, in particular the last 11 years of my journey in the Lord, which has been marked by this experience of being in the heavens and opening the eyes of my heart and doing what John did in Revelation. That's the only reason why I'm here talking to you, is because of that original encounter in 11 years since of just doing it every day because I was so hooked that I could do that. And any time that someone's going to discipline themselves to open the eyes of their heart and do what Paul said and look at the unseen things that are eternal, you're always going to find out stuff that you have no business knowing. It's just the way it goes. You're going to go to the up here. Remember, that's what John was told in Revelation. Come up here. Where was he going in the Spirit? In the up here, So come up here, and when you go to the up here and you do what John did, and you're seeing with the eyes of your heart where Jesus ascended to, the risen Lord, you're going to find out things from heaven's perspective, those eternal things, which means you're always going to be in this place of discovery. Now, that's a fun place to be, not for the faint of heart. There are ditches to avoid on the road of discovery. You probably know them. I've probably talked about them before with you. You got one ditch on this side called the religious spirit. And how do you know it's there? When you're more afraid of getting it wrong than you are excited about getting it right. That's when the religious spirit is there. Okay? So just write that down, mark those words. There's no scriptures to back me up, so maybe you should take it with a grain of salt. But when you're more afraid of getting it wrong than you are excited about getting it right, you know the religious spirit is present. It's okay that it is. You're not, none of us are perfect. So everybody's got a little bit of that to deal with. Some of us more than others. Some of us, it takes a decade or so. And then you're like, okay, I'm getting down to the last little bits, but it's still there. And it's just fundamentally, if you're more afraid of getting it wrong than you are excited about getting it right with God, it's just because in your mind, the devil's really big and God is kind of small. That's just all it comes down to. And so you get really worried that you're going to mess it all up and that you're going to get it wrong, and God's just waiting for that moment because he has been wanting to smite you this whole time because he's such an exclusive, limiting deity that he's like, I just cannot wait for them to mess it up because I've been looking for something to nail them on. And then you do it and he's like, got him, he's out, going to hell, But that's the mentality of big devil, small God, or not loving God, whatever it is that leads to that system of belief that says, I better not mess this up because I don't want to go to hell. Therefore, you're always going to be more afraid of getting it wrong than you are excited about getting it right. A little bit of fear of getting it wrong should be there. Let's not completely get rid of a sense of being circumspect in what we do. Test the fruit. Line it up with things, preferably the scriptures. History is also a good guide. Look at what's happened in the past. But in general, you should be excited about possibilities. Now, so there's the one ditch there, religious spirit. The other ditch, how good have I been teaching this the last couple times I've been here? You know what the other ditch is? In a sense, yes. Liberalism was the word. I would call it deception. So you've got one ditch here, religious spirit. One ditch here is deception. Now, deception's caused by liberalism of everything that I experience is 100% right. Everything I get from the Lord is 100% right. And you know when that kind of thing is there, because if you've ever talked to someone and they say, the Lord told me, and then every single thing that they do is because the Lord told me. I had turkey sandwich today because God told me to have that turkey sandwich, That's the other side. Everything I do is right. Like everything I see in the Spirit is 100% accurate. Therefore, no need to test, no need to approve, no need to make sure it lines up with the Scriptures or the history of what God has done with man. And that's a ditch as well. They're both going to lead to, I'm not saying you're going to go to hell, it's just going to slow you down. Ditches tend to do that. You got to stop, wait for the tow truck, that sort of thing. Someone's got to haul your hiney out before you get on the road again. But somewhere in the middle of those two ditches is the sweet spot called discovery. And it's still not entirely without its own things. It's a minefield. That narrow road of discovery is a total minefield. So you have to avoid this ditch, and then you have to tiptoe your way through the minefield in the middle. But what a fun adventure that is to do that. Why else are we here? Just to play it safe and do nothing? Let's do something. Might as well do some things that involve risk and take you out of the comfort zone, like Daniel was saying earlier. We just need to do something that requires God's presence in our life. Discovery certainly does. I have stumbled, I feel like, into some keys that I would not hesitate to give away to everyone, to say, if you have some of these keys, it's going to go a long way to help you understand the world and how things work in the kingdom of God and everything else. Now, I don't know what they all are. I haven't made a list in my head of what those keys would be, but one of them is definitely understanding the first chapter of Genesis and understanding it as a poem. I know I've taught you this in online classes. I know we've probably mentioned it before, but Genesis 1 is a poem, and it's a very specific kind of poetry. And the best thing about Genesis 1 and the poem that it is that it's not special. And that actually makes it special. It's not special because other cultures used the same kind of poetry, a 7-day poetic form, and they always used it when they were inaugurating a temple. And there are examples in early literature of the early Canaanites, even the Egyptians, inaugurating their temples with a 7-day poetic form. That's how they recorded their history. So they would consecrate everything in the temple for 6 days, and on the 7th day, that was the day of rest. So imagine like we've made the temple. This is what the other nations would do. We made these bricks. We baked them. They're strong. Now we built our structure. Probably wasn't that impressive. And we've got all these articles to use in worship. We've got an altar at the front. And they'd make like a little place in the altar to put an idol of whatever deity they were going to worship in that temple. This is the pagan way of doing things. And that's how they inaugurated their temple. 6 days of getting it ready. And then at the end of that 6th day, the idol goes in its little altar. And then the 7th day was the day of rest. It was like a Sabbath. This idea is present in other cultures of the same time. Now, the Sabbath, that 7th day of rest, we think of Sabbath rest as kind of like nap after church. That's our modern evangelical understanding of a Sabbath. You've worked all week, then you went to church on a Sunday, probably didn't want to do that, so you get a nap that afternoon as a reward for all that hard work that you did. But really what the Sabbath is, is that it's the beginning of normal temple operations. In other words, the work of fixing it and making it ready is done. Now it can do what it was always designed to do. That's the rest. The work of forming it is over. Now, the beauty of Genesis 1 is that it's not special in that other nations are using the same poetic form and the same time period, but it is special because Genesis 1 is God creating the entire nature and creation, and he's lining it up in the exact same poetic form as if to say, the entire cosmos is my temple. So all the other nations are like, we built a temple. And God says, so did I. It's the entire cosmos. Everything you see is the temple. And the ultimate scandal of Genesis 1 is that when it comes time to put the idol in the temple on the 6th day, God does so in the form of mankind. Because it says, let us make man in our image. Image is reflection in Hebrew and is also idol. That gets translated idol in the entire Old Testament. Translators, for I think reasonable reasons, we all understand, they were like, okay, I'm comfortable saying idol pretty much everywhere else, but not here, because that would, we'd be like, wait, let us make man as our idol? It's the same word. But think about it. All these other nations, when they built these temples and they fashioned an idol out of clay that looked like what they thought that deity looked like, or maybe they fashioned it out of metal and they put a little smaller version of that deity in that place. And the Godhead says, let us make man in our image, a copy of who we are, but in smaller form. In fact, we'll make them out of the clay and put them in the midst of the cosmic temple as the idol of God's presence, spread out in all of these little representations of the Godhead called mankind. That's the scandal of Genesis 1. Understanding that the cosmos is a temple and mankind is the image of God in it is a vastly powerful key to knowing who you are and what everything else is. Temples are places for spiritual activity. They're not markets, they're not courthouses, they're not government buildings, they're not those things. Temples are places where spiritual things are coming and going. It's the place of exchange between that other world that you can't see and this one that you're in. The temple is the place that connects the two realms, which is why the tabernacle and temple and many other ancient temples were designed to look like the Garden of Eden. Because that's what Eden was, the place of exchange between heaven and earth. It was the one place where heaven and earth overlapped. Everything past that. Now, if you're kind of following the story here, you know heaven and earth were overlapping in Eden. Then you know it went all wrong in a hurry, and the two realms separated out. They went like this, and our experience became one or the other. And if you just follow the story, everything that God's doing in the scriptures is coming up with a way to reconnect the two realms. That's with the tabernacle and temple, a place where they would overlap again. So the inside of those things was designed to look like the garden. That's why there's palm trees in it. And there's whatever the starry presence, the menorah, the 7 lights, because there are 7 moving lights in the sky, the sun, moon, and 5 visible planets. All of those things are there to remind them. Remember the cosmic temple, the whole thing? Remember how it overlapped in Eden? That's what's happening in this place. Everybody good so far? You good? All right. That's our role, is to be God's representation in a place where spiritual activity and exchange is always happening. In a temple, everything is designed to minister to that idol. It's all there to pour into that idol, and that's you. The entire cosmic temple is designed to attend to the humans that are in it. But it's also an exchange, because all of that temple activity was there to pour into that idol, because they kind of wanted something from the idol, didn't they? All of these ancient cultures are like, let's go into the temple and do this dance and burn this and maybe sacrifice something because we really want a good harvest. All right? So the idea was an exchange. We're going in there to minister to this so that something will come back out, right? And again, the scandal is no need to worship an idol, because you're it. That's why idol worship was wrong. Because it's a total misplacement of what a human being really is. Are you following that? That's why it's part of the 10 Commandments. Don't make for yourselves any graven images. You're the graven image. You're the one that's been placed in the temple. Anything else is a total misunderstanding of your own identity. If the cosmic temple is a place for exchange and is designed to pour into the image, and the image pours back out and in and out like this, then everything that God created should affect you in some way, in a good way. That's why in Job it talks about the Pleiades. There's sweet influences of the Pleiades from heaven to earth. When we think of seasons and holidays like Christmas, it's all part of the cosmic temple. It's all there as an occasion for something in this cosmos to pour into the image and for the images to bless back out how they've been attended to. We tend to not think of it this way, though. We tend to think that the seasons will change and holidays will occur whether we participate with them or not. Isn't that fair? You're pretty sure Christmas will go on this year, even if you go full bah humbug and decide not to participate. You're sure it will continue to go on. But if we're looking ahead to a moment when we have realized what the cosmic temple really is, we're looking at Romans chapter 8. When Paul says that the creation is longing and groaning and waiting for the sons of God to be revealed. Because when they're revealed, they will liberate or free creation, the cosmic temple, from its frustration. What's your job in the next age? What's your job in the coming years to liberate the cosmic temple from its frustrations? There's nothing to back me up here. So you're just going to have to be like, Christopher could be full of it, or he might be right. But I think with each passing year, we're going to find out that nothing is happening independent of us. That holidays and seasons don't just happen even if we're not here, but it becomes more and more participatory. In other words, we're the element that is actually releasing the things in the temple to happen. It's just a hunch, Joshua. But I think with each passing year, we will come into our state of sons so that we're the ones with our song, with our words, with our actions, that's actually causing a season to change. That it wouldn't happen without us. It would only happen because of us. That it's us that's opening up the door for a season called Christmas time. Now, the funny thing is, we believe that in the negative all the time. Because every one of us probably thinks Halloween wouldn't happen unless people participated with it. And the reason why things get released during Halloween is because of people's participation. Are you following this? So we all kind of think in the back of our minds that when people start to celebrate that holiday in a little bit of a wonky way, that they're opening some doors to stuff. And maybe you feel that. I certainly do. If you're spiritually sensitive at all and you live in a neighborhood like mine and 10 houses down, there's a neighbor that puts gravestones up in the front yard with the names of the family written on the grave. And I'm like, that seems extreme to me, you know? And then, you know, it doesn't stop there. They have like mannequins and dolls that are coming up out of the ground. And like mannequins big and dolls small. And I was, you know, like these things were dead and they're coming back. And I was like, you know, I don't think God's mad at them, but when you do stupid stuff, there's consequences. I mean, like you can choose to open up a bunch of doors, and it's not like God's like, well, we were looking for a reason to get them. That's not where God's at. God's like, wow, that was dumb. You know, like I love them, and if they want to come talk to me, they're going to see me smiling and welcoming them in. But that was dumb. Like you're going to open up a door here, and it's probably going to cause some problems. You know, that's just action consequence, not God's mad, you know? But everyone thinks that about that holiday, that people's participation with it is the thing that's opening the door. So we're okay with the other team participating with the cosmic temple and that it's dependent on them. But when it comes to us, we think that things would go on without us and nothing would ever be missed. So why do we attribute participation with the temple to the other team? But our team is so insignificant, none of what we do matters. It's fascinating to me. Why do they get all the cool stuff, the other team? Why do they get a sense of purposeful humanity? And we get, it would happen whether you were here or not. If I'm right, then with each passing year, we will find out that our role in the center of this place of spiritual activity with the cosmos is so powerful that it becomes your songs, it becomes your voice, that when you start to celebrate a holy day, you are literally the one that's opening the window for some spiritual thing to come in and actually change the season. And it wouldn't change without human participation. It's a hunch, but I feel like it's a good one. Now, my own Christmas journey here is kind of funny in that, you know, I have like numerous issues in life. One of them is that I really struggle when I can't find out what something means. I don't like doing things without meaning. I mean, I already live in a world that's been stripped of its meaning, and I feel like the biggest challenge anyone has that lives in this present time is how to restore meaning in a meaningless world, and it has been stripped of its meaning so thoroughly. So we struggle because so many things just happen and we don't know why. We do so many things and we don't know why. So I have this problem in life that I can't rest until I know why I'm doing something. I just don't want to do it. It's got to have meaning and substance so that it actually, so no pun here, but so that it means something. And I had a problem with Christmas, especially when I got filled with the Spirit, and then like I started looking at church and Christianity through the lens of, man, they are screwing so much stuff up, and why can't they get it together? I was in the Baptist church at the time. No offense to any Baptists, you know. But, you know, when you get filled with the Spirit and you go to church and you're like, this is dead. Like you're ready to just throw everything out and start over. And then they start putting up Christmas trees on Christmas, and then you get mad at that because you're like into Hebraic roots, because you had to like cast off all the Gentile craziness, all of the places where Christianity got muddied up and watered down and everything else. So you're like, I'm going full Hebrew here, you know, because that's not watered down. That's not, you know, like messed up with the Gentiles and the Romans and all their stuff, you know. And so I had years where like Christmas trees in a church would throw me right off. You know, I would be like, pagan trees, don't they know? You know, bunch of pagan evergreen trees and their pagan ornaments. Haven't they read Jeremiah about cutting down a tree and putting ornaments on it to the Queen of Heaven and all this stuff. You're just ready to kill them all, you know? I was. So I didn't do Christmas for a while because I was like, it's pagan. And then, of course, I'm like, and most of these traditions are German. I'm not German. You know, it's obvious to anyone that's looking at me. You know, we clearly, the Carters, do not come from Scandinavian stock. You know, all 5'7" of me is clearly not Danish or Norwegian or Swedish or German for that matter. Do you know the tallest people in the world live in the Netherlands? Did you know that? Yeah, I've always wanted to go just to feel like the spies that went into the land and came back and said we're grasshoppers in their sight. I've always wanted to go there just to feel that. Just be like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I totally get it, how they would be freaked out. That's only 50% a joke. I would totally do it for that reason. So I'm not German. I don't need these traditions. Why am I doing this? Again, there's no meaning in it for me, you know? So I really struggled, and you know, here I am married. I don't know how long we'd been married, 3 or 4 years. And so I like called off Christmas in the Carter house. I was like, we're not doing it, you know? My poor wife, I'm telling you. She's got a lot of jewels in her crown for putting up with me and the extreme amount of patience that she's had to have to see me through times of total questioning about things. And we did that for a while because I just refused the pagan origins of Christmas. Until, of course, these years come where I stumble into using the eyes of my heart to be in the heavens. And I stumble into being up there around Christmas time and seeing the risen Lord in my home that he's prepared for me. And there he has erected this beautiful evergreen tree. And there are ornaments on it. And he's got a big smile and this big red coat with the fur lining it like this. And I was like, I didn't know I was ever going to have to rebuke you, risen Lord, but you are a Jew. Like, I am pretty sure you should not be doing this, you know? But I learned the hard way and the long way that Jesus is more than the King of the Jews. He died, the King of the Jews. He was raised, the once and future King of every culture. He died Jesus of Nazareth. He was raised Jesus of the entire world. He is everyone's, every culture's once and future king. That's where the Arthurian legend has its weight of Arthur being the once and future king of Britain. They're literally thinking mythologically, they're waiting for Arthur's return. They're waiting for Christ's return. He's their once and future king. So he has to restructure me and kind of like elbow me in this moment where he's got on the Christmas robe and there's presents under the tree and there's a fire roaring and it's winter outside. And the kid in me is like wanting to accept this. But the religious spirit in me is like, no, we shall not go back to the pagan roots. And here he is flaunting Germanic traditions in front of me in the heavens like, what's your problem, man? This is awesome, you know? So what's really going on with Christmas? Well, I'm guessing you know, this is not going to be a giant shock to you, that Jesus is not born in December. Have we all passed that hurdle? Are we aware astronomically and otherwise? It's not just unlikely, it seems to be impossible that he's born in December. It is very likely that he is born in September-ish time around the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, partly because of the astronomy that you mentioned earlier, that I've kind of adhered to the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus. I think there's a lot of good evidence for that being the star. Planets are wandering stars there. But I think there's some more little tips that September is his birthday. One of them occurs in the Gospels during the Feast of Tabernacles, when Jesus stands up and says, "Ho, everyone who is thirsty, come to me. You who have no money, I will buy you something to drink." And what's interesting about that is that that's a Hebrew birthday celebration. In their culture, on your birthday, you gave gifts to everyone. You didn't get them, you gave them. So when he stands up and says, "I'm going to buy everybody around," in not those terms, he's saying, it's my birthday. It's Tabernacles. Come celebrate with me. Just a little nod there. Now, also, it's interesting that in the Minor Prophets we read that after the resurrection of the dead, after a return of Christ, and he will put his feet on the Mount of Olives, it says that year after year, all nations will come up to Jerusalem to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Interesting, after the resurrection, that seems to be the most important holiday over Passover or maybe some other different ones, because it's the completion, the fulfillment of something. And Zechariah goes on to say that if a nation doesn't come up to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles, they will have no rain. That sounds like angry religious God again, doesn't it? They didn't come to celebrate the feast, withhold the rain. We'll starve them. We'll starve them out until they accept my rule as the king. Maybe, maybe not. How about there's no rain on that nation because the next year they only have one place to go? No rain, no crops, no abundance. So the next feast, the only place they could go would be to Jerusalem, where he's doing what he was doing in the Gospels. Come to me, all you who are thirsty, and I will give you something to drink. I will give you something. It's literally the parent that says, I love you. You're making poor choices. I'm simply going to take away the privilege that I gave so that you will feel that pain for a moment and come back and see that I'm good. I didn't tell you to come up to Jerusalem so that you could pay me tribute. I told you to come up to Jerusalem so that I could give you gifts. That's why the nations are supposed to come to the Feast of Tabernacles. He's not trying to get their riches. He's trying to give them his. That's actually how the gospel works, isn't it? So what's going on? What's going on with Christmas here? If it's not the birth of Jesus, what is it? Well, historically, our Christmas traditions come from a few sources, and they're all pagan, so get ready, everyone. Are you ready? Do you know what they are? Anybody know the traditional sources of our Christmas traditions? And it is Germanic, a lot of it. No guesses? It should be like required learning for everybody. You got the original Santa Claus, okay. St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas. Okay, so we have that. Was he Turkey? In Turkey or Greece? St. Nick. I think it was Turkey. Anyway, we have a saint that gave some gifts about that time of year. Isn't it interesting that we don't know the meaning of the things that we do? Oh, Joshua, take notes this time. This is important. Saturnalia and Yule, two festivals. Saturnalia was very Mediterranean. Yule was very Germanic and Nordic. Y'all should know this, really. Saturnalia, a celebration of Saturn, who was the presence of time and prosperity and renewal. So here you have December 25th is around the winter solstice, which is the darkest, shortest day of the year. And people want to celebrate a time of new blessing and new birth and renewal. Saturnalia. So what did they do? They had giant parties and they gave gifts to each other. Sound familiar? You also had equality at that time of year. So that if you wanted to tell your boss off, you could. And people still do that around Christmas at Christmas parties. That's a tradition that has carried forward into the modern day. Everybody has a little too many, and all of a sudden you're telling your boss how you really feel. But it's Christmas, so you can get away with it, you know? That's the classic Christmas party of offices probably a few decades ago. I'm not sure if that's the case now, especially post-COVID, but that's another story. The point is, Saturnalia, one of the major influences of our Christmas traditions, and the other is Yule or Yuletide or Yuletime. This is the Germanic origin. Yule is one of the names for Odin or Woden. Big guy, long gray beard. Sound familiar? Santa. And so Odin would, this is his celebration, again, darkest, shortest night of the year. And we celebrate a new season of light that's coming. Now, again, if the winter solstice is the 21st, by the 25th, it was pretty well known that the sun was coming up or staying up a little longer. So that's what causes the celebration about a week or so, a little less than a week after the solstice, that we're back to a new season of light. Now, all of those traditions, all of those origins, by the way, Yule had 12 days. It was a 12-day celebration. The evergreen trees come from the Yuletide celebrations. All these ancient cultures, darkest night of the year, what are you going to do? Have a party. This is natural. What are you going to do in your party? Lights, Where are you going to get them? We're going to light something on fire. What do you got to light on fire? Let's have all the guys go out in the woods, cut down a big evergreen tree. We'll put the thing in the village square, have a couple days or 12 days of full on, like whatever the last stores and the storehouses were, we're eating and drinking it all, on the 12 days of Yuletide. This is it. This is the end. We're either coming back or we're not, but we're going out with a party. And then at the last day or the beginning of that celebration, what do? You light that giant evergreen on fire. It warms everybody up. There's dancing through the night. Sounds like a pretty good time, except for all the pagan stuff. It would have been great, So our Yule and our Saturnalia is what gave us Christmas as we know it, because it's fundamentally a winter solstice celebration. Now we have to ask ourselves, is this all bad, these roots, or is there something to be redeemed in all of it? And what is God thinking by showing up, at least with Christopher, in the heavens with the red coat and a laurel crown in front of a tree like, what's your problem? If we're going back to our role in the cosmic temple, everything that God made in that cosmic temple was designed and purposeful. The enemy didn't create any of it. C.S. Lewis makes this point so well in Mere Christianity. Evil doesn't exist in a vacuum like it can create itself. It is a derivative of good. Nothing starts evil. And you can philosophy and logic your way, circles around this, you'll never be able to disprove this. Evil is always a derivation of something good. The good is there in the origin. It has to become perverted in order to come up with something evil. So for everything that's evil or pagan or missing the mark, it's coming from some origin that's good. Now, it's interesting that to the Jews, those Hebraic roots that I loved so much and still do, all of their holidays are lunar. All of the Hebrew festivals follow a lunar calendar. Interestingly, the Gentile holidays always occurred on a solar calendar. Jews, Hebrews, moon, Gentiles, sun. Now there's a reason for that, because there's always a metaphor being played out with the Jews and the Gentiles. The Jews have always been symbolic of the inner life of man. The moon is symbolic of the inner life of man. That's why when people would go crazy, we called it lunacy. Lunacy. It's as if they were under the influence of the moon and all the crazy stuff came out. In other words, the inner stuff became the outer stuff, and people were like, whoa, this way to the padded room. That's lunacy, a lunatic. It's not always in the negative, but you get the idea. Moon, Hebrews, inner life of mankind. Gentiles, outer life of mankind, and the sun. Hence, Jews, lunar holidays are very important. Gentiles, and I'm oversimplifying, but Gentiles, solar holidays, very important. It's the equinoxes and the solstices. To the entire Gentile world, especially Northern Hemisphere, the winter solstice was an incredible celebration, even in its pagan forms, of death and resurrection. It is the death, it is the dying of the outer world. The trees lose their leaves and become barren. The sun doesn't come up as much. Nothing will grow. Whatever you stored is what you had. All of it starts to die. It's as if the cosmos itself is breathing its last breath. And then right after the solstice, the whole cosmos goes again. And it's this presence in the temple that you didn't have to be a Jew to pick up on, that there is a resurrection of the dead. Because the temple itself went through a death and a resurrection. And it's attending death and resurrection to the idol that's in the temple. Still there? The winter solstice is a powerful moment that God designed. Newsflash, God doesn't love the moon and hate the sun, right? That's the temptation. Well, the Jewish people did lunar holidays. Those must be holy. So when did the devil create the sun and the way that the sun works again? When did the devil create solstices and equinoxes? When did that happen? Obviously it didn't. God doesn't he didn't pick the moon. Well, I'm only in the moon, so you sun people are going to hell, Bunch of pagans. He's just waiting. He wants one new man to be formed out of the two. He doesn't want to supplant one with the other. He wants all of the Hebraic root, which is the root of humanity. If you want to reinterpret the Holocaust with the metaphor that I just gave you, the Holocaust is the outer Gentile world trying to destroy the inner conscience of mankind, which we physically see in the Jewish people. That's why they carry the law, the system of truth and right and wrong. The Holocaust is Germanic Gentiles trying to rip the conscience out of themselves and throw it in the fire so that they will never have to deal with a standard or truth or a right anymore. And that war isn't over. We're still trying to do it. It's building again. There'll be another moment. There will be another moment where we will try it again. The outer Gentile world will make another attempt. They're not done. To rip the conscience out of ourselves and throw it into a fire for the last time. I think that'll be the last time that it's tried. It's probably the last thing that will happen before there's a whole new story being played out. It's just a hunch. But there are some scriptures to back that one up. The solstice is not pagan any more than a new moon festival for the Hebrews is. And you would never say it is. A solstice is also a special moment. An equinox is also a special moment. These are all God's rhythms of life that he put into the cosmic temple. There's something powerful this time of year. It's almost like Passover for the Gentiles. The Jews had Passover, death and resurrection, literally. Put the blood on the doorpost, spirit of death passes over, and you are released from the prison of death and resurrection. The winter solstice was the same message, but in a form that the Gentiles could pick up on. This is when the whole temple goes and gives up the ghost, like on the cross. And then the sun starts to rise earlier, and there's more daylight hours, and I'm running out of breath. And finally, a few days later, after the death, the Christ breathes in that new life and comes out of the tomb. And it's in a form that the Gentiles can see. Now, we may have thrown the pagan Saturnalia, we may have thrown the pagan Yule on those times, but the reason for the season was always there. And it wasn't the birth of Jesus. It was the celebration of the death and the resurrection of humanity. Now, something I think interesting happens when we walk this narrow road of discovery between the two ditches of the religious spirit and deception. And we can actually take away the kind of added in thing of it's the birth of Jesus. Nah, it's not. We know it's not. Don't change the songs. Songs don't need to change. Let's sing the songs. I mean, nothing needs to change. The nativity scenes, if you've got one in your yard, it's not hurting anybody. Keep it there. That doesn't matter. But something fun happens when you can actually step out of that kind of, maybe there's some religious spirit stuff there that goes, well, am I allowed to celebrate something if it's not the birth of Jesus? And if you follow the story that I've been telling you tonight, the answer is not only yes, but every passing year from here forward, even more so. Because it's the participation of humanity that is actually opening up the door now for all of us to feel that happens at the winter solstice. It's a Sabbath moment. And the principle of Sabbath is not a Hebrew principle, because the Sabbath is there even before there are Hebrew people to observe it. I can think of two principles that are eternal that we typically attribute to the law, of the Hebrew people, and it has nothing to do with them. Tithe and Sabbath. Both of those things exist before there are Hebrews to even mark it. It's just mankind walking around for those 2,000 years. But the principle of the Sabbath, that moment in time when the cosmic temple will finally do what it was always designed to do, and we can stop trying to work it or fix it or get it ready. The Sabbath rest, the beginning of normal temple operations. The observance of the Sabbath, this is what got the Jews in so much trouble, is that it became a religious thing. We're doing this so that God will like us. No. You're observing the Sabbath so that you can participate with the cosmic temple. So that you can experience every week the like that. And that happened every week to point to a bigger Sabbath that would happen like every 7 years. And that was pointing to a bigger Sabbath that was going to happen after 6,000 years of the story of forming the temple, until the 6,000 years were up and the sons would come out and free the creation to say, now you can do what you were always meant to do. And then the 7,000 years is the ultimate, like this. Because that 7,000 years was the Sabbath rest that each of the smaller Sabbaths was pointing to the whole time. It wasn't about arranging your behaviors so that God would like you. It was about an invitation to participate with the cosmic temple that we had been placed in as the idol of God's presence. Now, what are you going to do? This is my question, right? You crazy, progressive Melchizedek Christian church crowd. You bunch of yahoos that would come into a room like this. Really, there's armies and then there's special forces, Armies do what armies do. They line up. There's a lot of structure to it. It works in big, blocky movements. But then there's a platoon of SEALs, Navy SEALs, and it's like they do things that the Army can't do, because they're highly trained. A lot's been invested into them. The amount of money, someone did this. They looked at the amount of money that gets invested into every Navy SEAL. That's why they don't just throw those guys into fights. They did it one time. And that was when, didn't we invade Panama at one point? We did. Something was going on in Panama. I think this was George H.W. Bush. And we went in to fix it, whatever it was. Who knows? And they threw the SEALs in as like shock troops to go accomplish missions. And they lost a lot of them. And the government was like, that was the dumbest thing we could have done. We've invested so much in these guys, not telling them what they're walking into, but just treating them like really good soldiers was a dumb way to use them. So from that point on, they never threw SEALs into anything. They would wait and they'd be like, SEAL team, whatever. Here's the situation. They'll spend 3 months practicing what they're going to do in that one situation before they go into it. They're incredibly talented soldiers. But just throwing them into a fight because we think they shoot better than the other soldiers was a waste. With the SEALs, you give them the objective. Then you give them tremendous amounts of resources to find out how to accomplish the objective and lots of time to get ready for it. And when they're ready, you fly them in on the helicopters, and they typically get out without losing a lot of people, and they typically do what they were sent in there to do. You bunch of Navy SEALs. You can do things that armies can't do. So what are you going to do around a holiday season? If I'm right, maybe I'm not. I kind of give this stuff to you like theories, even though I believe they're airtight arguments. I give them to you like theories because honestly, I want you to wrestle. I want you to ponder it on your own. I want you to decide for yourself what you're going to do so that it will mean something. You just do what I tell you to do, you're back in a meaningless place. You won't know why. You need a why for the things that you do. So if I'm right, if you think I'm right about Romans 8 and the cosmic temple in Genesis 1, then imagine your participation with Christmas time, with the winter solstice. Imagine what you could do if you can perceive yourselves as the representation of God, whose voice and song and dance and activity actually opens the door for Christmas to come in and bless an entire region with Christmas time, with the of the winter solstice. Can I read you a poem and then we'll do an activity in the heavens? Okay. Amen. Oh, these are the NFL scores for today. That's not what I'm looking for. If anyone's... Did they? Okay. And the Buccaneers are trouncing the Bills, in case you wanted to know that. I'm like only halfway joking. Here you go. Come on. Go for it. A poem about the winter solstice from Robert Frost. And if your last name is Frost, you should have written a poem about the winter solstice. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. What's the darkest evening of the year? The winter solstice. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The snow. And do you know when it snows, it actually gets quieter because snow absorbs sound. That's why when it snows, it feels quiet outside. Again, it's the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. But I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. Now, Robert Frost's poem is a classic, Walking Through the Woods on a Snowy Evening. Most people think he's writing about the death and the resurrection of the winter solstice. He's pondering it as he walks through those woods, his own mortality. These woods, they're lovely, dark, and deep. He's being drawn into the exhale. But then he realizes, I have promises to keep. He's not done. And miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. It's his recognition, God is not done with me. I have more to do. I'll sleep, but not yet. He breathes in new life, and he knows his journey isn't over. That's the poem, Walking Through the Woods on the Snowy Evening. Why don't y'all stand up with me? Let's participate with heaven for a moment.